Little Richard, a founding father of rock and roll, whose fervent shrieks, flamboyant garb, and joyful, gender-bending persona embodied the spirit and sound of that new art form. That new art form called rock and roll. The architect, starting with Tutti Frutti in '56, Little Richard cut a series of unstoppable hits like Long Tall Sally and Rip It Up that same year. Lucille, one of his signatures, released in '57, and Good Golly Miss Molly in '58. One of my impressions of Little Richard was that when I was younger, my dad introduced me to him. One of the first records I had was Chuck Berry, Otis Redding, and Little Richard. I will never forget that personally. His music was driven by his simple, pumping piano, gospel-influenced vocal exclamations, and sexually charged, often gibberish lyrics. Although he never hit the top 10 again after 1958, Little Richard's influence was massive. The Beatles recorded several of his songs, including Long Tall Sally and Paul McCartney singing on those tracks, and the Beatles' own I'm Down paid tribute to Little Richard's shredded throat style. His songs became part of the rock and roll canon, covered over the decades by everyone from the Everly Brothers, the Kinks, and Creedence Clearwater Revival to Elvis Costello and the Scorpions. Elvis popularized rock and roll. Chuck Berry was the storyteller. Richard was the archetype. Little Richard's stage persona, his pompadours and androgynous makeup and glass bead shirts, also set the standard for rock and roll showmanship. Prince, to cite one obvious example, owed a sizable debt to the musician. Prince is the Little Richard of his generation, Richard told Joan Rivers in 1989, before looking at the camera and addressing Prince. I was wearing purple before you was wearing it. If you love anything about the flamboyance of rock and roll, you have Little Richard to thank. And where would rock and roll be without flamboyance? He was the first to be able to do that. Uninhibited back then, you had to have a lot of not giver, you know the rest. Born Richard Wayne Penniman on December 5th, 1932 in Macon, Georgia. He was one of 12 children and grew up around uncles who were preachers. He said he was born in the slums. My daddy sold whiskey, bootleg whiskey. Although he sang in a nearby church, his father wasn't so supportive. He accused him of being gay, resulting in Penniman leaving home at 13 and moving in with a white family in Macon. But music stayed with him. One of his boyhood friends was Otis Redding, and Penniman heard R&B, blues, and country while working at a concession stand at the Macon City Auditorium. After performing at the TikTok Club in Macon and winning a local talent show, Penniman landed his first record deal with RCA in 1951. He became Little Richard when he was about 15 years old. When the R&B blues swirls were filled with acts like Little Esther and Little Milton, he had also grown tired with people mispronouncing his last name as Pennyman. He learned his distinctive piano style from Escarita, a South Carolina singer and pianist who also wore his hair in a high black pompadour. For the next 5 years, Little Richard's career advanced only fitfully. Fairly tame, conventional singles he cut for RCA and other labels didn't chart. He said when he first came along, he never heard anything called rock and roll. When I started singing, he said, I sang it a long time before I presented it to the public because I was afraid they wouldn't like it. I never heard nobody do it, and I was scared. By 1956, he was washing dishes at the Greyhound bus station in Macon. By then, only one track he'd cut, Little Richard's Boogie. It hinted at the musical tornado to come. He said he put that little thing in it. He tweaked with his gospel roots. I always did have that thing, but I didn't know what to do with that thing I had, he said. During this low point, he sent a tape with a rough version of a bawdy novelty song called Tutti Frutti to Specialty Records in Chicago. He came up with the song's famed chorus, a wop bop a loo bop a wop bam boom, while bored washing dishes. By coincidence, label owner and producer Art Rupert was in search of a lead singer for some tracks he wanted to record in New Orleans, and Penniman's howling delivery fit the bill. In September 1955, the musician recorded a lyrically cleaned up version of Tutti Frutti, which became his first hit. It topped at 17 on the pop chart. Tutti Frutti really started the races being together. From the get-go, my music was accepted by whites, Little Richard said. His follow-up, Long Tall Sally, hits number 6, becoming his highest placing hit of his career. For just over a year, the musician released one relentless and arresting smash after another. From Long Tall Sally to Slippin' and a Slidin', Little Richard's hits, a glorious mix of boogie, gospel, and jump blues produced by Robert Bumps Blackwell, sounded like he never stood still. With his trademark pompadour and makeup, Richie once said he started wearing so that he would be less threatening while playing white clubs. He was instantly on the level of Elvis Presley, Jerry Lewis, and other early rock icons, complete with rabid fans and mobbed concerts. That's what the kids in America were excited about. They don't want the falsehood. They want the truth. Richard Penniman, aka Little Richard, transitioned in 2020. His friend, Jerry Lee Lewis, made a statement. He said, "It is with a heavy heart that I ask for prayers for the family of my lifelong friend and fellow rocker, Little Richard. He will live on, always in my heart, with his amazing talent and his friendship. He was one of a kind, and I will miss him dearly." As with Presley, Lewis, and other contemporaries, Penniman was cast in early rock and roll movies like Don't Knock the Rock in 56 and The Girl Can't Help It in 57. In a sign of how segregated the music business and radio were at the time, though Pat Boone Miliquitos covers of Tutti Frutti and Long Tall Sally, both also released in 56, charted as well, if not higher than Richard's own versions. Boone's Tutti Frutti hit number 12, surpassing Little Richard's by 9 slots. Penniman later told Rolling Stone that he made sure to sing Long Tall Sally faster than Tutti Frutti, so that Boone couldn't copy him as much. But when the hit stopped by his own choice, after what he interpreted as signs, a plane engine that seemed to be on fire, and a dream about the end of the world and his own damnation, Penniman gave up music in 1957 and began attending the Alabama Bible School, Oakwood College, where he was eventually ordained a minister. When he finally recorded another album in 1959, the result was a gospel set called God is Real. In 1964, with his gospel music career floundering, Little Richard returned to secular rock, although some of the albums and singles he recorded over the next decade for a variety of labels sold well. He was welcomed back by a new generation of rockers, including the Rolling Stones and Bob Dylan, who played Little Richard's songs on the piano when he was a kid. When Little Richard played the Star Club in Hamburg in the early 60s, the opening act was none other than the Beatles. We used to stand backstage at Hamburg's Star Club and watch Little Richard play, John Lennon said later. He used to read from the Bible backstage, and just to hear him talk, we'd sit around and listen. I still love him, and he's one of the greatest, said John Lennon. By the 70s, Little Richard was making a respectable living on the rock oldies circuit, immortalized in a searing, sweaty performance in the 1973 documentary Let the Good Times Roll. Little Richard also dismantled sexual stereotypes in rock and roll, even if he confused many of his fans along the way. During his teen years and into his early rock stardom, his stereotypical flamboyant personality made some speculate about his sexuality. But that flamboyance didn't derail his career. But while recalling a 1987 Playboy interview where Little Richard said, "I love gay people. I believe I was the founder of gay. I'm the one who started to be bold, telling the world, you got to remember, my dad put me out of the house because of that. I used to take my mother's curtains and put them on my shoulders, and I used to call myself, at the time, the Magnificent One. I was wearing makeup and eyelashes when no men were wearing that. I was very beautiful. I had hair hanging everywhere. If you let anybody know you was gay, you was in trouble. So when I came out, I didn't care about what nobody thought. A lot of people were scared to be with me." Later in life, he described himself as omnisexual, attracted to both men and women. But during an interview with Christian Tide Three Angels Broadcasting Group in 2017, he suddenly denounced gay and trans lifestyles. God, Jesus, he made men, men. He made women, women. You know. And you've got to live the way God wants you to live. So much unnatural affection. So much of people just doing everything and don't think about God, said Little Richard. Yet none of that seemed to damage his mystique or legend. In the 1980s, he appeared in movies like Down and Out in Beverly Hills, and in TV shows like Full House and Miami Vice. In '86, he was one of the 10 original inductees into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And in 1993, he was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Grammys. His last known recording was in 2010, when he recorded a song for a tribute album to gospel singer Dottie Rambo. In the years before his passing, Little Richard, who was by then based in Nashville, still performed periodically on stage. Through the physicality of old was gone. Thanks to hip replacement surgery in 2009, he could only perform sitting down at his piano. But his rock and roll spirit never left him. He said, "I'm sorry I can't do it like it's supposed to be done," he told one audience in 2012. After the audience screamed back in encouragement, he said, with a very Little Richard squeal, "Oh, you're going to make me scream like a white girl." With all that being said, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. My name is Gary Harrison. Subscribe to the channel. Remember, stay humble and stay hungry. And I'll catch you on the next one.